Sometimes one art form will cross over into a different art form, and that is the case with Rudy Lu. His photography includes nature and abstracts, as well as capturing local, national, and international musicians on stage and performance since the mid-1990s. Rudy's work has been displayed all over the New York Capital District area, as well as being featured regularly at albanyjazz.com and nippertown.com. Born in Albany, New York, Rudy's parents moved around a lot in his earlier years, from Glenville to the Bronx to Tampa, Florida, but Rudy was finally raised in Niskayuna, New York. Rudy Lu is a graduate of Union College, Schenectady, New York, with a bachelor's degree in biological sciences, and then earned a master's in zoology from Miami University in Ohio. Rudy was introduced to photography in high school, then took an intermediate course in college and photographed for the school paper and yearbook. Graduate work involved considerable effort with photomicrography. Rudy had a career in the field of environmental health and safety, primarily working in the property and casualty insurance field, with some work in tech and construction. During his working career, Rudy took several workshops focused on nature photography. He has been photographing concerts since his college days. Some of those early subjects have included Return to Forever, Patti Smith, and Loggins and Messina. In the 2000s, Rudy met Andrei Pilarchek, who became a mentor to Rudy. Rudy started publishing work online for albanyjazz.com in 2007 and then for Nippertown in 2010. He also photographed regularly at the free concerts at Music Haven in Schenectady, where he got to hone a lot of his craft. Rudy Lu's work has appeared in the New York Times, All About Jazz, and Downbeat. Rudy considers the late great photojournalist Eugene Smith and Francis Wolff, the late co-owner of Blue Note Records, the late Chuck Stewart, whom he met before he passed, and Richard Conde, a contemporary, as major influences. If you are out catching a music performance in the 518 area, you are bound to sooner or later see Rudy capturing local or international musicians at work in his ongoing photo journey, a place where the visual and the musical meet. One art form complements another is where you'll find Rudy Lu's wonderful work. Rudy Lu, welcome to Empire Radio Sounds, and thank you for sharing your photo artwork and your time with us. It seems you are everywhere at once in the 518, taking photos of musicians at work in our area. Um, my first question would be, what is your motivation to photograph musicians at work in particular?
Well, being a baby boomer, I grew up with the music. The music was part of my life growing up. Ironically, I never played. I started with piano lessons in
Oh,
junior
okay.
high and simply didn't practice. Didn't want to. I didn't want to play what they were telling me to play. I wanted to
Yeah,
play rock and roll. Um, and photography came later. It came as I was a senior in high school. I didn't particularly feel I was creative, and I am a science nerd. So, what's a better joining of my interest in science and fulfilling an art requirement than
yeah.
to take a photo?
Yeah, well, and I think you said something here that really strikes a chord. Being of the same age group, the dreaded baby boomers, um, music was more important when we were coming up, I believe, than it is today. Would you agree?
I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being like I said, I was a music nerd. I got turned on to college FM music, which was
Oh yeah.
completely free form at that time.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
hear the Doors, you could
Yeah.
hear some jazz and some
Yeah.
folk, all in the course of one set, whatever that DJ felt like play.
Yeah.
And all those artists were listening to each other. That's something people don't realize.
Yeah, that's a good insight actually. And I see that, and well, as a playing musician myself, it's been a necessity to work all the time to have a handle on all these different things. But well, let me get to my next question. I want to get back to photography,
Okay.
and that in my experience when recording music, there's a point when the musicians have to decide if that is the take of a song or a throwaway. How do you, as a photographer, know when a photo is a keeper or not?
Yeah, it's a funny question you ask because there was a photographer from our area who drove to Boston last night to see the Foo Fighters. And
Okay.
he posted some stuff. He literally didn't sleep. And he says, I'm not really happy with these. And I thought it was kind of funny. I said, yes, as a journalist, we have to put things up as close as possible. But as an artist, photographers often take a look back and
Yeah.
work later on. I know when I got killer shot, but
Uh-huh.
the other ones that are okay, that fill the, I won't call them okay, that are good enough for me to fill a page
Yeah.
or an article, I kind of mark, and then I decide what tells the story later on.
Okay. There's been cases in history where people just took a shot and didn't realize just how much it was going to influence the culture, even, which we'll get into a little bit later. But
Right.
um, okay, well, as a sax player, I found that depending upon the type of gig I'm playing, I need to mentally and musically switch gears. We kind of touched on this from one band to another. Do you find you have to change your approach to taking photos of musicians depending on what style or genre they are from? And if so, in what ways?
Uh, Definitely a rock show. I want to change a little the focus a little bit to the audience. If I'm shooting a folk show, the audience is not particularly exciting. The
Hmm.
rock show, the reactions are great. The crowd generates the excitement. Also, where I'm positioned. In a rock show, we do like to be way up front for at least 3 songs.
Mhm.
And we try and record what the musician is actually projecting as a performer. I don't necessarily do that with folk or jazz. Sometimes it's, as Miles Davis would put it, the space between the notes.
Mhm. Interesting. Um,
The lighting is probably the most important thing. If I'm
okay.
shooting in the hellhole that I usually am in, and other people hate, where you've got that infamous, I'm sure you've seen it as a musician, you've got that one red spotlight. Yeah, and it might not necessarily be pointed at you. I've got some challenges ahead, and I've got to figure out what is the best lighting position to use with a
Uh-huh.
rock show or a nice hall like a Ho's Music Hall or Troy Music Hall or the Egg. I don't have that issue. So sometimes it's the venue itself, or Lena's, of course, which is a wonderful
Yeah.
place.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of lighting, I could use some more of my this video we're doing here, but just consider it a jazz approach.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Who are some local or beyond local musicians you would like to photograph that you have not had the opportunity to? And what is it about them that you think would make them an interesting subject to photograph?
Jocelyn and Chris. Uh,
Okay.
Believe it or not, to me, they're probably the biggest thing to hit out of the park and go national. They're
Uh-huh.
also very visual,
Okay.
very, very visual artist. Uh, Another one, Reese. I'm trying to remember his last name. Reese has, let's see if I can find it in my notes here. Reese Fulmer
Okay.
and his Carriage House Band. Seeing him as an MC at Cafe Lena when that was his day job.
Yeah.
I like his lyrics, the creativity of his band. Somebody I will never get to photograph locally, and I really regret it, even though he and I became friends. Tony Marcalis,
Oh, okay.
such a giant.
Yeah. Um, okay. Well, there's one that's always
Nationally, I have a
oh,
bunch. Some are being resolved. Bonnie Raitt, I've probably seen a half a dozen
oh
times.
yeah, that would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. I will be able to photograph her for the first time at Fall Freihofer. Um,
Oh, this
not
yeah, upcoming.
likely, not likely I'm going to be able to photograph Peter Gabriel. Up to photograph him.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to have the funds or the time to see him in Buffalo, or I think he's in Boston sometime
Right.
world tour. And David Byrne too.
Oh, that would yeah, that I could see that would be
Tina
very
Turner, I completely missed.
yeah,
It's more, yeah,
yeah, life stops for nobody, huh?
no.
Um, okay, well, in your opinion, could you perhaps talk a little bit about the advantages or disadvantages of using black and white versus color in your work?
Black and white, it's a two-edged sword, actually. Black and white can be used to hide really awful lighting. When the lights are really down low, you can do a lot more with an image that's strictly black and white than you can with the color to make
Mhm.
it something usable or something somebody like to look at. Also, can choose it for artistic reasons. I publish mostly in color for Nippertown because that's what people expect these days.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people that don't care for black and white, but to me, black and white is part of our heritage. I grew up looking at black and white photos.
Yeah, I think as not being a photographer, there's something about black and white that well, it can capture something that is maybe it's just a cultural thing, but I mean, and the easiest example is some it can capture evil.
Yeah.
I'm referring specifically to Adolf Hitler. It seems like he looks more sinister in black and white. Maybe it's just my own psychosis from that, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, black and white, somebody said, if you're shooting black and white, you're capturing the soul of somebody. For color, you're capturing their clothes.
no, that's and I
Yeah,
guess
I
that's
thought
really
that
what
was,
I'm trying to say, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. um, all right. We have talked about this briefly when we were at the Eddies this past couple of months ago. Photography can make a major impact in society. I remember there was an issue in Life magazine in the 1960s that put a photo of every soldier killed that week in Vietnam. Some say that that was the turning point of support for the war. It might have been the early 70s. Is there a hot button issue here that you think a photograph could influence society? And what might that be in your view? It's kind of a heavy question, but
Yeah, I don't know if still photography has that same impact on people. We're getting stimulated all different directions. Videos are
good point.
flying from normal people who can just hold up their phone. Photos are done the same way. Life magazine, people used to look at it every week for their news.
Yeah.
It was a really different time, and that issue that you mentioned, I did happen to look it up what year it was. That was 1969, and
Okay.
that was published a few months after what I thought was probably the most iconic photo of the war. After the Tet Offensive, there was a general executing a Viet Cong
Mhm.
guerrilla, and there was a caption, he said, that probably captured something that was misinterpreted from what I read later on. He said, "Buddha will forgive me."
Hmm.
You know, and it's literally the moment the bullet goes through the guy's
Yeah,
head.
I'm
Yeah, I
well
don't
acquainted with
remember it.
that.
And the story was the
Yeah.
guy was taken prisoner after he had done some really awful acts of war.
Sure.
Yeah.
It,
So there were two sides to that.
oh yeah. It's well, it happens to be the year that my father was in Vietnam. I'm an
Oh,
army brat.
oh,
Um,
wow.
so there's a lot of things are still unraveling with all this. You know.
Yeah, yeah,
Any,
yeah, yeah. All war sucks. Let's
yeah,
just be blunt about it.
yeah.
It's
And I'm
every
sure my
word
father
always
would
said
agree with
that.
that too,
Yeah, I'm
if he
sure
was
he
here.
would.
Yeah, it's not something anybody wants to be involved in. I guess kind of that was sort of well, while we're on this subject, I think of what's going on in Ukraine, and I wonder if there'd be one photograph that would hit the world in a way that would. I was thinking about this morning, actually. I
There,
suppose if you
there
took a picture,
there are some very good photographers out there that are documenting it. There's the
yeah,
gentleman I follow who is an expatriate who lives in Paris and
okay,
Havana. And he spent 3 days there and he put out an incredible book, but I don't see anybody other than the photography world and the
yeah.
art world admiring the work. So I don't know if
Hmm.
it has that type of effect. He's one
And
of the
uh,
photographs.
yeah, I think you hit it right on the head early on with this question when you said how the world has changed, and there's so many people have access to take a picture now, and we're just inundated all day long with selfies to pictures of cute cats. You know,
Yeah.
so I don't know what it would take. I'm going to
Yeah,
move forward.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But anyway, I wanted to add on to that. I think photography is part of that spectrum.
Uh-huh.
You look at the way that the New York Times
Yeah.
is covering things and the way Nippertown does. Nippertown's coming at you in all different angles. It's written. We've
Yeah.
got some video feeds, for people who want to talk,
Hmm.
and we have photos. The New York Times will put them all together. Of course,
Okay.
they have the manpower, and from what I understand, they're thriving. At least
Hmm.
I know they're paying their photographers more. They actually raised the rate of their
Yeah.
photographers, but they'll do a combination of slideshow with a quote, and it'll move along. It'll just kind of scroll along, and then you'll have an article in between. And if you want to just look at the slides, you're good. They're good with that, getting the
Mhm.
message. You want to read the whole thing in depth, you can do it. So they're trying to reach everybody. I think that's the way things are going.
Okay, yeah. Well, I wouldn't disagree at all with any of that. Um, okay. When you're doing photo work that is more of an art or abstract artwork, what might be your intention or goal, perhaps? Meaning, what sort of artistic statement might you be going for? I'm assuming that may change from day to day, but
That literally changes from day to day. It might change from the time I capture it to the time I decide to process it. I
uh,
always process. I don't shoot what is known as JPEG a lot because it throws away a lot of data. It decides what data to throw away and what looks good.
mhm.
I try to keep all the data because I might want to change the mood.
Okay.
And it was done analog also. Ansel Adams, who did more of the landscapes style, Weston, and some of the folks who did still life would have a negative, and they would interpret it in many different ways.
Hmm.
It's you know it's interpreted after. It's not necessarily interpreted there, but
Hmm.
I kind of just shoot what's interesting. If I decide I want to force myself to see something, I'll go out with a
Yeah.
camera, and quite a few things get eliminated actually, depending on the time of day and the light. If it's like now, noon, it's a gorgeous day, don't get me wrong, but I would not do a landscape on this day because there's just so many shadows,
Uh-huh.
a lot of blacks and a lot of whites. The camera won't see all that. I
Hmm.
may try another medium other than visible light, like infrared,
Yep.
which will interpret that in interesting ways.
Well, I'm getting a big education here, Rudy. I appreciate it. This is fascinating. In what way do you think the obsession of some folks taking endless selfies is a reflection of our culture?
Uh, I think we've always been a me culture,
Yeah,
the individual, that is America, but
that is America.
I think it's been accentuated more. Uh, we got to remember, I think cameras became popular for people to take family portraits of each other. That's what Kodak started with.
Yeah, yeah.
They had a little brown box, and you used to ship the whole box to them in the 19th century. They'd say, ship the box and we'll take care of the rest. And you'd come
Interesting.
back with a bunch of paper photos of your family, and people like to remember the things that are close to them. That's what made
Yeah.
photography popular.
Well, and this is a little off my. You sparked my mind here. Kodak. I often wonder how they missed the boat that digital was coming, and they just went under by staying
Uh,
with film.
well, slow to move bureaucracy. I mean,
Yeah.
I think younger companies who don't have the layers and layers, and they're built up, and there's a reason for them. They help them sustain things when things are good. When
Yeah.
they're not good, you can't change fast enough.
Yeah.
IBM on the other side is something, they are no longer who they were. They do not
Right.
make computers. They are strictly software and implementation now.
Hmm.
That's another one that went away. And
Yeah.
an outsider to run and turn the company around.
um, I just thought I'd throw that out there while I was thinking of it. Is there a subject outside of music that you'd like to explore in depth with photography that you have not covered yet?
Um, well, I like doing a little bit more abstracts. I'm trying to not necessarily read as much on technique as the feeling behind what motivates art, and get into the inner person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find the techniques necessarily as important. I will learn them as needed. I probably don't do enough of it because I will lose interest with the mechanical side of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've got to keep on it because sometimes I need that technique.
Okay. And well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Rudy, and have you do this interview. I thank you on behalf of all the 518 musicians that you have shared your talent with, and it seems like I see you all the time whenever I'm gigging. So I
Yeah,
don't know how it's like there were like there's 10 of you around here somewhere, it seems.
yeah.
And it's really wonderful to have somebody out there doing that. It helps all of us as we go along in our thing. My last question for today, though, is what upcoming projects or exhibits would you like to make folks aware of that you have coming on the way?
Well, I don't have any physical exhibits coming on. It takes quite a bit of effort, and there's very little return on it, unfortunately.
I'll
At least
bet.
for me, I don't know if I'm probably not marketing properly. No, knowing I'm not a great marketer, but
Welcome to the
uh,
club.
yeah. But something that will be coming up. If you want a piece of my work, I
Mhm.
have been documenting the Freihofer Jazz Festival since
Oh, great.
2010. And
Wonderful.
the past 3 years, including the year that it was virtual, I have had a slideshow
Okay.
that's been shown in between sets. Me and another photographer or two.
Okay.
I've been asked to renew that
Cool.
strictly with slides. Well, they will be slides, but images from the last one. He's
Okay.
going great guns with that, and they will be shown in between the sets. So when they're changing over the set, you'll see slideshows to
Oh,
keep the
good.
crowd interested. Something I don't think we did much before. Speaking of us, continual stimulation.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you told me that. Unfortunately, I got to work those
Yeah.
nights, but my wife is going to the 24th, and it's going to be a fantastic
Oh
lineup
yeah.
this year. I mean, what a spectacular lineup! So I'll tell her to keep an eye out for your work between. She'll be there all day, you know.
Yeah, well, you won't be able to miss it. I'm sure you'll air probably 20 times. And something I'd like to throw out to the
Sure, please
musicians.
do.
Um, I do enjoy doing it's kind of a moot point at this point because nobody's buying CDs and physical.
Not very often,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, medium, but I like illustrating CD covers and not necessarily with performances. If you've got an idea or a feeling you want expressed, I can look in my catalog of images and we could work on something. I did have something that was outside the music world. I have a book cover,
Uh-huh.
and a friend of mine was releasing an MP3, and he just wanted some imagery
Sure.
for it. He was releasing a Halloween theme. I took a I spent, I don't know, it was an evening in a graveyard in northern Vermont when I was traveling.
Boy, that's
Never did
dedication.
much of it. I mean, the images are really kind of cool because there was a mist that was really hot and humid and very green. But anyway, I sent that to him. I said, I don't know if these will work. They worked for him. They changed them around. They put in some spooks. And it was fun. Yeah, he couldn't pay me, but the other artists who compiled it, they blew it up into a poster. So I have a poster.
What a great story, really.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was rather funny. He said, "I have no money. Can you tell me though?" I said, "Sure, you're an old friend. Let me." I said, "Does this work?"
Well, on that note, I thank you again for sharing your time with us, and sharing that story about the graveyard is a good way to end the show. And I wish you all the best of your luck in all your future
Yeah, well, looking
projects.
forward to seeing you out there too.
Well, thank you kindly. I'm playing with all different sorts of folks. Three bands in one weekend last weekend. So
Oh, great.
yeah, I'm
Yeah, yeah,
delighted.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes
Lucky.
that stretches your mind.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun still for me.
Sure.
And thank you again for being on our show. And and I think we're all set here. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you. Catch